Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are continuing on the chapter, The Boundaries of the Ignorance, page 579, beginning with the sentence, "This is an exaggeration."
To establish the connection and the context, we will read the summary of what he has said earlier. Okay, so in the previous para, he says, we must now ask ourselves, what is this subconscious in us? How is it related to our surface nature? How is it connected to the subliminal, of which it seems to be a part? We are conscious of our body, and we even identify ourselves with it. We are not at all aware how it functions, how the heart works, how the kidneys, how the brain, what does the liver do. We know none of these things. These are hidden operations, and we know them only as far as our mind tells us. What about the vital? Just as prana exists in plant and animal, it works in our body also, but we do not fully know our vital desires, emotions, its subconscious movements. Disease is more clear to us than health. Pain is more real to us than pleasure. We understand these as much as our mind informs us. So we club all these physical vital movements together and call them unconscious. But this is not true. This is an exaggeration. There is an exaggeration in this view. So, this is what he said earlier. Now we read the para that we have to read today. This is an exaggeration and a confusion due to our identification of consciousness with mentality and mental awareness. Okay? We think that consciousness is only mental. But it is not. It is vital, it's also physical, and even in the stone there is consciousness. That's a mistake we make. Mind identifies itself to a certain extent with the movements proper to physical life and body and annexes them to its mentality, so that all consciousness seems to us to be mental. But if we draw back, if we separate the mind as witness from these parts of us, we can discover that life and body, even the most physical parts of life, have a consciousness of their own, a consciousness proper to an obscurer vital and to a bodily being. Even such an elemental awareness as primitive animal forms may have, but in us, partly taken up by the mind, and to that extent mentalized. Yet it has not, in its independent motion, the mental awareness which we enjoy. If there is mind in it, it is mind involved and implicit in the body and in the physical life. There is no organized self-consciousness, but only a sense of action and reaction, movement, impulse, and desire, need, necessary activities imposed by nature, hunger, instinct, pain, insensibility, and pleasure. Although thus inferior, it has this awareness, obscure, limited, and automatic. But since it is less in possession of itself, void of what to us is the stamp of mentality, we may justly call it the submental, but not so justly the subconscious part of our being. For when we stand back from it, when we can separate our mind from its sensations, we perceive that this is a nervous and sensational and automatically dynamic mode of consciousness, a gradation of awareness different from the mind. It has its own separate reactions to contacts and is sensitive to them in its own power of feeling. It does not depend for that on the mind's perception and response. The true subconscious is other than this vital or physical substratum. It is the inconscient vibrating on the borders of consciousness, sending up its motions to be changed into conscious stuff, swallowing into its depths impressions of past experience as seeds of unconscious habit and returning them constantly but often chaotically to the surface consciousness, missioning upwards much futile or perilous stuff of which the origin is obscure to us, in dream, in mechanical repetitions of all kinds, in untraceable impulsions and motives, in mental, vital, physical perturbations and upheavals, in dumb automatic necessities of our obscurer parts or obscurest parts of nature. We'll go through this sentence by sentence and see and give examples of what he's saying. And we'll do it quickly. This is an exaggeration. What is an exaggeration? To say that all vital and bodily movements are unconscious. They are not so unconscious. They are conscious but not mentally conscious. They are vitally conscious and materially conscious. This is an exaggeration and a confusion due to our identification of consciousness with mentality and mental awareness. We think that consciousness is something mental. It's not so. Even lower down, there is a consciousness right down to matter. Okay, so mind identifies itself to a certain extent with the movements proper to physical life and body and annexes them to its mentality, so that all consciousness seems to us to be mental. So what he's saying here is that there are vital movements and our mind tries to understand them to a certain extent. And so we think that we are understanding with the mind.
Yes.
So that is not actually so. This is independent of the mind. With our mind we are trying to understand. Okay, so mind identifies itself to a certain extent with the movements proper to physical life and body and annexes them to its mentality, so that all consciousness seems to us to be mental. Even vital movements, vital consciousness and body consciousness, we think it is mental. It is not mental because it's coming through the mind. When it comes to the mind only we understand.
So the mind says, I have a pain.
Yeah.
But it's not the mind's pain.
No, it's not the mind's pain, but you are understanding the pain through the mind.
Exactly.
That's what he's saying. For instance, you get an indigestion. The body is having indigestion, but the mind says, oh, there's something wrong here. So everything comes through the mind. That's what he's saying. Okay, so mind identifies itself to a certain extent with the movements proper to physical life and annexes them to its mentality, so that all consciousness seems to us to be mental. But if we draw back, if we separate the mind as witness from these parts of us, we can discover that life and body, even the most physical parts of life, have a consciousness of their own, a consciousness proper to an obscurer vital and a bodily being. Even such an elemental awareness as primitive animal forms may have, but in us partly taken up by the mind and to that extent mentalized. We'll give examples of what he's saying, then it will become clear. Okay, so he's saying, but if we can draw back, if we separate the mind as witness, can we do that while we are identified with our body-mind life? No, we can't. So what he is saying is, if we can draw back, when can you draw back? When your consciousness goes to the self, not otherwise. So then you are totally separated. To a certain extent, you can watch your own thoughts and your own vital movements up to a certain point. You can say that yes, I know that I have this defect in me. So you are observing your vital behavior and you are identifying itself through the mind and saying that yes, I am aware that there is this problem. I am aware that I have a physical problem in my knees. But This is through the mind. It's objectivity to a certain extent. But when Swami is saying you draw back fully, that is possible only in the self. Your body mind, your consciousness, soul consciousness comes out and stands apart and watches it. Then there is a complete separation. So Swami is saying when that happens, what happens? When that happens, what is the result? But if we draw back, if we separate the mind as witness from these parts of us, only witness, no judgment.
Yes.
You're just watching and seeing what the facts are. No judgment at all in the self. If we separate the mind as witness from these parts of us, we can discover that life and body, and then there is a parenthetical phrase, even the most physical parts of life, okay, the most physical parts of life have in other words, the cell. And Mother is talking of the consciousness of the self all the time. But she realizes that because at what height of consciousness she is there. But we don't know that our cells are conscious. We don't even know that our cells exist. But she can see that. There is a consciousness in every cell. So, that's what he's meaning by even the most physical parts of us have a consciousness of their own, a consciousness proper to an obscurer vital and a bodily being, even such an elemental awareness as primitive animal forms may have. So, what do they mean by that? Unicellular creatures also know when they should merge with others or go away from them. Okay? So sometimes they separate themselves, sometimes they swallow up something else. So there is a certain awareness there, but it's a totally body consciousness that is operating. So even such an elemental awareness as primitive animal forms may have, but in us partly taken up by the mind and to that extent mentalized. So everything that we have, body, mind, everything is mentalized. We understand all these things through the mind. Yet, it has not, in its independent motion, the mental awareness which we enjoy. Which is it? Yet it has not, which the elemental awareness. The vital awareness and the body awareness is not like the mental awareness. That's what he's saying. It's a different category of consciousness. Yet it has not in its independent motion note the word independent motion. If you watch only the vital movements or the bodily movements, okay? So, it does not have the mental awareness which we enjoy. If there is a mind in it, at all, if there is a mind in the vital and the body, it is mind involved and implicit in the body and in the physical life. So, mind is there, but it is sleeping. It's not a mental awareness. It's an involution. When everything is there, even the supermind is there in the body. Okay, so to extend, if there is mind in it, it is mind involved and implicit in the body and the physical life. There is no organized self-consciousness. It's a very general consciousness. It's not organized. Like our mind is organized, we can differentiate, we can judge. There is no judgment in the vital consciousness and the body consciousness, there is no judgment. There is no discrimination. That's what he means by organized. There is no organized. Okay? Our consciousness, mental consciousness has got imagination, discrimination, judgment. This is the organized. But the vital consciousness doesn't have any of these things. It is just aware of a general awareness. A general awareness is there, nothing more. The vital itself, consciousness will not tell you that this is beneficial to me or not. It will not tell you. Neither the body. So that's what he means by limited. Only sense of action, where is it gone? No organized self-consciousness, but only a sense of action and reaction. That much it has got. Movement, impulse and desire, need, necessary activities imposed by nature. What are those necessary activities imposed by nature? Hunger, instinct, pain, insensibility and pleasure.
So when the mind says, this is not good for my body,
That's right. But it is not the body telling you that, it's your mind telling
the
you.
mind telling you that. Exactly.
It's the mind telling you.
Yes.
The body has only pain. They take the case of a dog, okay? When a car runs over its leg, it has pain. But it is not a mentalized pain. It is just pain. It is not conscious of itself as I have pain. There is no such feeling. It will keep limping. It will go on as though nothing has happened. So there is no self-judgment and there is no in-look. So no organized consciousness. That's what is meaning. So, hunger, instinct, pain, insensibility and pleasure. These are all imposed on you by nature. Although thus inferior, it has this awareness, obscure, limited and automatic. But no judgment, no imagination, no discrimination. These things are not there. Okay, so. But since it is less in possession of itself, now that's interesting. What do you mean by possession of itself? Being a master. When you possess something, you are master of it. You are the owner. So these consciousnesses are not masters of itself. They just exist. They give you only action, reaction, that's all. Okay? So, but since it is less in possession of itself, void of what to us is the stamp of mentality, we may justly call it submental, but not subconscious. Don't call it subconscious. There is consciousness in it. But submental you can call it. That's what it is meaning. But not so justly the subconscious part of our being. For when we stand back from it, again the standing back from it is possible only when you separate yourself. When we can separate our mind from its sensations, we perceive that this is a nervous and sensational and automatically dynamic mode of consciousness. So this consciousness is nervous only. Okay, it tells you action, reaction. Sensational, it will give you pain or pleasure. Automatically dynamic mode of consciousness. Automatically dynamic, if it is something pleasurable, it accepts. If it is something not pleasant, it withdraws. So that much consciousness is God, the body and the vital. Okay, so. Dynamic mode of consciousness, a gradation of awareness different from the mind. In other words, consciousness is something general right from the highest level to the lowest level, and at each level it takes on the color and hue and nature of that particular plane. So at the highest level it is divine consciousness. At the spiritual level it is much less than the divine consciousness, but 10 times more than our mental consciousness. In the mind it becomes mental consciousness. In the vital it becomes vital consciousness. The body when it is hungry, it says, you are hungry, but you get that feeling through the mind and you say, I am hungry. You don't say my vital is hungry, you say I am hungry. So everything is mentalized. But there is a vital consciousness. There is also a body consciousness. Body consciousness we have discussed very often. Okay? Every time you sneeze, every time you cough, what is happening? The body is trying to reject something which is harmful to it or unpleasant to it. So that is consciousness. It is rejecting something it doesn't want. Okay? When you have indigestion, okay, there is a vomiting sensation. The body is saying, this is harmful to me, I want to throw it out. You vomit. So this is body consciousness.
So in the spiritual planes of consciousness, even at the very beginning, is there a stepping back?
In the spiritual consciousness, there is a stepping back.
Yes.
Only in the spiritual consciousness, there is a stepping back.
Yes, right.
At our level, there is no stepping back.
Right.
To a certain extent, an objectivity is
Yes.
possible, but not full. Okay, so automatic dynamic mode of consciousness, a gradation of awareness different from the mind. It has its own separate reactions to contacts and is sensitive to them in its own power of feeling, in its own way. It does not depend for that on the mind's perception and response. The body knows what is harmful to it. It's not the mind telling it. Suppose you put your hand in fire, it withdraws because it knows that it is harmful to it. So this is nature's way of protecting yourself. Nature is protecting you. So this perception of pleasant and unpleasant is nature's way of telling you what you can access and what you should not access. So this is the dualities. So it does not depend for that on the mind's perception and response. The true subconscious is other than this vital and physical substratum. It is the inconscient vibrating on the borders of consciousness, sending up its motions to be changed into conscious stuff, swallowing into its depths impressions of past experience as seeds of unconscious habit and returning them constantly, but often chaotically, to the surface consciousness, missioning upwards much futile and perilous stuff of which the origin is obscure to us, in dream, in mechanical repetitions of all kinds, in untraceable impulsions and motives, in mental, vital, physical perturbations and upheavals, in dumb automatic necessities of our obscurest parts of nature. This is very interesting. We'll see what he's saying. Okay, so he's saying, it's a huge sentence. The true subconscious is other than this vital and physical substratum. So, it is the inconscient vibrating on the borders of consciousness. The inconscient is 99.999 unconscious. But the subconscious is trying to become conscious. And that is your, as I said, if you want to think of it in that way, it's the cellar of your being, where all these things which you don't need are being put there. But when you are going, now after you finish this class, you will go back to your home. On the way, you will see many things which you are not mentally conscious of. There will be a dog barking in a corner, there will be someone selling something on the footpath, but they just come in and it all settles in the unconscious, in the subconscious. And then it sends up these vibrations in dream and other ways. So he's saying it can even be physical. For instance, people have all sorts of, what in Hindi we call them mudra dosh. Someone will be twitching his nose or this sort of movement, or there is somebody who does this.
Yes.
These are all movements coming from the subconscious. There used to be a gentleman who would not enter into a house directly. He'll go in, come out, go in, come out, go in, come out. These are all habits which come from the subconscious. Okay? Or all sorts of habits can be there. Okay. So habits of thinking also, they all come from the subconscious. It's very interesting if you see your dreams. The most insignificant event in waking life comes out in the dream. It comes out. So this is what Stephen is saying.
So these chaotic
That's right.
that
Yes.
come up.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. The true subconscious is other than this vital and physical substratum. It's an inconscient vibrating on the borders of consciousness, sending up its motions to be changed into conscious stuff, swallowing into its depths impressions of past experience as seeds of unconscious habit, returning them constantly, but often chaotically, to the surface consciousness, missioning upwards much futile and perilous stuff. Much futile also, but also perilous. Those things which are harmful to you also, it gets absorbed. Okay, so of which the origin is obscure to us, in dream, in mechanical repetitions of all kinds, in untraceable impulsions and motives, in mental, vital, physical perturbations and upheavals, in dumb automatic necessities of our obscurest parts of nature. I'll tell you something very interesting. I had a friend, and suddenly this person would utter some peculiar words, okay? And she says, I don't know why I said that. From where the hell did it come? So all these things come from the subconscious. Even habits and even words, sometimes all these things come up from the subconscious.
And how does one work to either control them or to keep them down?
That's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's possible only when you go up.
Okay.
Then you have, I remind you of Srebro's poem, God's Labor.
Yes.
He is clearing up his subconscious.
Yeah.
So that the light enters there also. If the light does not enter into the subconscious, the body will not change. So if Srebro is interested in body transformation also, he has to do that. So first of all, the light from above changes the mind. To a certain extent, you can transform your mind. If you are a very good yogi, even your vital will get transformed to a certain extent. Otherwise, the old habits will remain. Then the body, the light has to come down into subconscious. Then there is a chance of the body being transformed. Srebro's body got transformed fully in color.
Yeah.
Only in color. Okay? But still he was subject to the ending of life, death. They have to undergo that. Even the avatars have to undergo that. So,
Which they said was a physical problem.
They
said it was a physical problem.
Yeah, that's right. All avatars have to undergo the laws of the physical world. Unless the supramental race will be free of that. They will be free. Okay? So and that is what Mother was doing. Mother was working not on her mind or her vital. She was working through the transformation of the body. She was, each cell, she was working at that level. Imagine that. It's not a yogi transforming his mind or his vital. No. She is working at the body level. It's fantastic. And the work she has done is there, recorded. In the universal subliminal, it is there. So the next person who takes up that work will be much helped by that. It's not something that has disappeared.
Yes, she said it would be available to others.
Yes.
Who are open.
Absolutely. In fact, that's what Srebro says. He says we are the pioneers. When we build, okay, when you build a road through a virgin forest, the others can now use it. So that's exactly the same thing in yoga also. They have built the road and now it's for you to follow the road. Even that is difficult. Okay. We go to the next paragraph.
Yes.
But the subliminal self has not at all this subconscious character. It is in full possession of a mind, a life force, a clear, subtle physical sense of things. So, the subliminal, I remind you, is what is inside you. Horizontally you go into yourself, not below. But the below and the subliminal are connected, as it is also connected with the superconscious. If you go down, it is subconscious. If you go into yourself, it is a subliminal. And if you go up, it is subliminal at the higher level. Subliminal at the lower level is the inconscient. They are all connected. Okay, so that's what he's saying. But the subliminal has not at all the subconscious character. It is in full possession of a mind, a life force, a clear, subtle physical sense of things. Those who have experienced the subtle physical world, they say, in a waking consciousness. Okay? You have the experience of the subtle physical.
Not in dream.
No, not in dream. In
waking
waking consciousness, you will see that the colors become 10 times brighter and the forms are beautiful. Not as in the physical world, they are subtle forms but 10 times more beautiful. That's a subtle physical world. So I am mentioning that. So in the intra-conscient of the subliminal, There is inner mind, inner vital, inner physical, which you can call also subtle physical. Okay, so sense of things. It has the same capacity as our waking being, a subtle sense and perception, a comprehensive extended memory, 10 times more than our physical memory. Why? Because you can also access your past life. So that's memory of your past life also is possible. Memory of your future life also may be possible. The Trikala Drishti. Okay. So all this is possible when you go into intraconscient. And that's why they can warn you also. Don't go there, don't do this. There are many examples of yogis guiding their disciples and telling don't do this or don't do that. They can see the future. So, extended memory and an intensive selecting intelligence. You can select what you want to accept and what you don't want to accept. If you are in the subliminal. At our level, no, we can't. We normally accept some things and don't accept some things depending on how pleasant or unpleasant it is, but not what is good or bad for you. We accept only what is pleasant and unpleasant. Okay, so selecting intelligence, will, self-consciousness, but even though the same in kind, they are wider, more developed, more sovereign. So what is the meaning? The subliminal inner mind is much wider and more developed than the physical mind. The inner vital is 10 times more developed than the outer vital. So too with the physical, subtle physical. They are much wider and more developed. And it has other capacities which exceed those of our mortal mind because of a power of direct awareness of being. If you remember, direct awareness of being, he has already told us in the previous chapter that it is direct separative knowledge. Yes. Without senses. Direct separative knowledge. That's what is meaning here. Second degree of knowledge. Direct but separative. Okay, so he has used different words here. Power of direct awareness of the being. So you can see how important the word direct is. Don't take it lightly, it's got a very specific meaning. Direct here means without physical senses. Okay. Whether acting in itself or turned upon its object, which arrives more swiftly at knowledge, more swiftly at effectivity of will. You can be more effective in your action if you are in the subliminal. More deeply at understanding and satisfaction of impulse. Everything becomes more enhanced. Capacity of knowledge, capacity of action also. Our surface mind is hardly a true mentality. So involved, bound, hampered, conditioned is it by the body and bodily life and the limitations of the nerve system and the physical organs. And the mind is being completely controlled by vital and body. But if you are in the subliminal, you are not, the body mind life is not controlling your mind or your vital or your physical. So it's 10 times more powerful. That's what he's saying. But the subliminal self has a true mentality superior to these limitations. It exceeds the physical mind and physical organs, although it is aware of them and their works, and is indeed, in a large degree, their cause or creator. So the inner mind is the origin of your outer mind. The outer mind is only a pale reflection of the inner mind. So that's what he's saying. Cause and creator. It is only subconscious in the sense of not bringing all or most of itself to the surface. It works always behind the veil. It is rather a secret intraconscient and circumconscient than a subconscient. The subliminal is an intraconscient and a circumconscient rather than a subconscient. It is subconscious in this sense that I am not conscious of it. But in itself it is fully conscious. Okay, so for it envelops quite as much as it supports the outer nature. It envelops the outer nature. This description is no doubt truest of the deeper parts of the subliminal. In other layers of it, nearer to our surface, there is a more ignorant action, and those who, penetrating within, pause in the zones of lesser coherence or in no man's land between the subliminal and the surface, may fall into much delusion and confusion.
Oh.
But that too, though ignorant, is not of the nature of the subconscious confusion of these intermediate zones. Has no kinship to the inconscience. So, this is something very interesting. When you are going into the inner being, you have to cross an intermediate zone. In another place he calls it the valley of the false glimmer. So once you go into your inner being, you are fine. But from the outer nature, going into the inner being, you have to cross this intermediate zone, which is a very dangerous thing. There have been very interesting cases where you can go wrong entirely by going there. Srinath has given the example of Germany, collective. I'll give you individual examples. But he has said about Germany, looking for its soul, it found its vital. He says that in several places. Okay? So, Germans are very introspective by nature. Just see their achievements, science, philosophy, music. They are all tops at that. So, there is an introspective. But looking for the soul, they got stuck in the intermediate zone and found their vital instead. That's why they could cause 2 world wars. So perilous can that be. Okay? So that's the interesting part. So I'll give you an individual example. This is a collective example. There was a gentleman here who was a swimming coach. He was not a swimming coach, he was a lifeguard. There was no swimming pool at that time. We used to all swim in the sea. And there used to be lifeguards. There was one lifeguard who had very interesting experiences. Okay, he could go into in the inner being and have all sorts of contacts with beings of other worlds. Okay, and he used to say that. But he wrote to mother about it, and mother stopped it for him, and he resented it. Mother has stopped all my experiences. But why did mother stop? Because for that particular person, it would have been harmful. So she stopped it. So just imagine this intermediate zone, what it is. Okay? So that's what he's saying. Okay. We might say that there are 3 elements in the totality of our being. There is the submental and the subconscient, which appears to us as if it were inconscient, comprising the material basis and a good part of our life and body. There is the subliminal. This is second. There is the subliminal, which comprises the inner being, taken in its entirety of inner mind, inner life, inner physical, with the soul or psychic entity supporting them. There is this waking consciousness which the subliminal and the subconscious throw up on the surface, a wave of their secret surge. But even this is not an adequate account of what we are, for there is not only something deep within, behind our normal awareness, self-awareness, but something also high above. That too is ourselves, other than our surface mental personality, but not outside our true self. That too is a country of our spirit. For the subliminal proper is no more than the inner being on the level of the knowledge ignorance, luminous, powerful, and extended indeed beyond the poor conception of our waking mind, but still not the supreme or the whole sense of our being. not its ultimate mystery. We become aware in a certain experience of a range of being superconscious to all these three, aware too of something, a supreme highest reality, sustaining and exceeding them all, which humanity speaks of vaguely as spirit, God, the oversoul. From these superconscious ranges, we have visitations, and in our highest being, we tend towards them and to that supreme spirit. There is then, in our total range of existence, a superconscious as well as a subconscious and inconscious, overarching and perhaps enveloping our subliminal and our waking selves, but unknown to us, seemingly unattainable and incommunicable. So, in other words, what are you? You are a condensation of the entire existence. So, there is something below you, there is an inconscient below you, there is an intraconscient inside you, there is a superconscient above you, and there is a circumconscient around you, the universe. This is what you are. That's what they say. But unknown to us, seemingly unattainable and incommunicable. Well, I think it's quite clear what he's saying.
Yeah.
I summed it up in this way, that you are a summation of everything that is there. A man is a summation of everything that is there. And what is that? Subconscious below, absolutely at the root, inconscient, intraconscient within, superconscious above, and circumconscious around you. That's what you are. That's what he's saying. And we are unconscious of all these things. We are conscious only of our surface being, mind, body, mind, life.
Namaste, all. And we will meet again on Saturday, page 581, beginning with the paragraph, but with the extension of our knowledge, continuing with the boundaries of the ignorance. Thank you, Ranga.
Okay.
Thank you.